Guys, Cinzer here, and welcome to another Shadowlands Alpha video. In this video, we're going to go over the Feral Druid. Now, Feral Druid is a pretty cool spec, at least in the history. I've always liked playing it. I'm the kind of person I like stealth classes. I like different types of classes, so the Feral Druid definitely stands out. And currently in Shadowlands, it's not I don't know really how to describe it. It's sort of average, I would say, compared to the last, all the other specs that I've been playing. It's not that great. It's sort of underwhelming. It works. There's some cool things like this, like Kara's Twig, for instance. I kind of like that. This is why I'm in Torghast. I wanted to kind of show the potential. This is an anima power, and it'll be a cool legendary because it allows you to increase the damage or healing of a certain ability whenever you shapeshift. And I have 2 stacks of this, and it's 400%, so it probably wouldn't be what it is if it was made into a power, but it's just kind of cool, and you're required to actually use it. But a lot of the stuff has just kind of been taken out. None of the azerite traits for Pharaoh are coming in, and most of the stuff that's been added is, as you'll see in the next section, more utility based. So I don't know. It works, but I think it needs some help. Let's go ahead and go on to the changes. Okay, so for the Feral Druid, here are the skill changes and unpruning and then the few talent changes that they have. So I feel like Feral Druid in general, at least compared to what I've played already and the other specs, they kind of got the short end of the stick, at least going into Shadowlands. So every other spec gets some sort of an upgrade as they level, like Starfall upgrade for Boomkin, Frizzy Regeneration for Guardian, and then multiple things for Restoration. Pharaoh doesn't get any skill upgrades. Now, for the actual general changes, the baseline now, Bark Skin is now baseline, although Pharaoh was the only one that didn't have that baseline. Cyclone is baseline and not a PvP talent anymore. Iron Fur is now baseline instead of it being in the talent, which I'll go over the affinities, which is one of the changes they made later. Wrath and I think there was one other ability. Iron Fur, Cyclone, Barkskin, Wrath. Actually, I think that's it. And yeah, so that's all the general like changes for Pharaoh. Now, when it comes to the actual Pharaoh abilities themselves, most of the stuff is pretty much the same. There is a big change though with Survival Instincts. Survival Instincts only has 1 charge now, and it's on a 4-minute cooldown. That's a huge nerf from the way it is in BFA, because in BFA there's 2 charges and they're 2-minute recharge. So you're getting half of the use for double the cooldown time. So that's a pretty big nerf to that survivability thing. Um, but yeah, other than that, it's pretty much the same, just without like the azerite traits. So I'll go over some more of that as well after the talent section now. So for the talent section, again, not much has changed for Pharaoh. The first row is pretty much the same. Predator's still going to be good for when you're killing multiple targets, and Sabretooth is always going to be one of my favorite talents just because it's nice to not have to worry about rip. And yeah. Second row, same. Now, when it comes to the affinities, things have changed a little bit. So now that Typhoon, um, oh yeah, Typhoon is not baseline. Typhoon is added to um, the balance affinity, but Typhoon used to be a talent. So now, if you pick balance affinity, you get Typhoon in addition to the Sunfire, Starfire, Star Surge. But since Wrath is baseline, then that's not added. So what they did was they gave each affinity another utility. So Typhoon, if you pick Balance, Incapacitating Roar, if you pick Guardian. So, and those are only usable in that form. So you can use it out of the form, but it'll shift you into the form. And then Ursul's Vortex for restoration. So it's just a little utility thing. It's kind of cool, but it's not going to be really, as a Pharaoh Druid trying to do DPS, it's not really gonna change much. Now, in this row, again, Mighty Bash, Mass Entanglement, they're still there, but they have Heart of the Wild now instead of Typhoon, since that's baseline. Well, not baseline, but added in with the balance affinity. So Heart of the Wild is a 5-minute cooldown, and what it does is it empowers your abilities depending on which affinity you picked. So if you pick balance affinity, the damage of your balance abilities are increased by 30%, and it makes Star Surge instant. Now, I do like the idea here. It is kind of cool because it makes it so that, like, if you pick the balance affinity, for instance, you can kind of get a DPS increase. Not necessarily by going into Boomkin, but if you have to go into Boomkin, and you could use that, like if you need to be at range for any period of time, you can do a lot more damage now. But yeah, it's for Guardian, it just gives you additional stamina, and then you can use Iron for it, so it makes it more of a tank. It makes these affinities more useful, so that if you have to shapeshift into them, you can get more use out of them. If you have to shapeshift to a bear, for instance, to tank for a short time, then you're more likely to survive. Restoration affinity, just if for some reason you need to get some heals off, which is not completely out of the question, there'll be stronger heals. So it's kind of cool, but again, not really much of a DPS increase unless you do balance affinity, and only when you can't be near the target. Um, this is all the same, all the same talents. The only other change is Blood Talents. So Blood Talents was changed. So for one, the bonus is 30% now, so that's an increase. The problem is, in theory, this could be better. So basically, the new Blood Talents makes it so that when you use Shred, Rake, or Thrash within 3 seconds of each other, the damage of your next 2 rips or ferocious bites is increased by 30%. So the last part of that I like. It makes your next 2 rips or ferocious bites increase by 30%. It's stronger, and it makes sure that you're not wasting it like you could be before. Because before it was just your next 2 physical abilities. Now it's going to be specifically Rip or Ferocious Bite. So it's easier to get that damage increase. Now the problem is you have to use Shred, Rake, and Thrash within 3 seconds in order to get that damage increase. And in BFA, it's whenever you use your um, instant cast Regrowth. And some people don't like that ability, and I don't really like Blood Talents, especially the way it is in BFA. I don't like it. I really don't want to take it. The problem with this one is you could end up you having to use abilities that you wouldn't normally use, like Shred. No, Rake and Thrash are dots. You can get a proc so that you can use Thrash for free, but it's still a dot. It's going to be a DPS loss if you're using, if you have to use like Rake and Thrash instead of Shred. However, the increase of your ferocious bite of rips by 30% is nice, but it just makes the rotation feel bad. We don't have the numbers, so it's probably going to be stronger. It's still, but it just doesn't feel right to have to use dots repeatedly, um, to get your damage in there. So like in a single target fight, I don't know. I personally don't like it. In an in-game scenario, it could end up being better, but it just feels weird to use. And so I still usually go with Mono Clarity. Now, those are like the baseline changes and the talent changes, but I do want to go over a little bit more about how the Druid feels, how Feral Druid feels. So right now, Feral Druid works. You can level pretty fine. You don't have any issues going through, but it definitely feels less. None of the Azerite traits have been added. And especially when you compare Feral Druid to other classes, it they don't feel like much. It really feels like they just took away and they gave them some utility stuff instead of like damage increases. So, the Azerite trait that makes Rip have a chance to award a combo point. Um, the other Azerite trait, I can't remember what caused it, but it makes it so that you can activate Berserk for a few seconds. Um, the Azerite trait that made Tiger Fury also grant crit. Those are all nice um, abilities and effects, and we're missing all of that for a Pharaoh. So Pharaoh currently definitely feels like one of those specs that definitely needs the borrowed power. They need a good Covenant ability. They need good legendaries. And like I showed at the beginning of the video, there is a really cool idea in that I think it was Lakara's twig or something like that, where when you shapeshift into a different form, it increases the damage or healing of one of your abilities. So you could be like you could start off the battle, for instance, before a battle starts, get a pull timer and then shapeshift in the last few seconds into cat form because you have 15 seconds before it'll cause your next shred to do like a lot more damage. So you can shapeshift, stealth, do your regular rotation, then your first shred will do a lot more damage. And then like during battle, you can shapeshift into bear, and that'll increase your mangle, or you shapeshift into moonkin and increase your wrath. Or if you need to get healing, just you know go back to normal form, and now your regrowth is stronger. These are all cool effects. Now, when it comes to um, doing that in battle, it could be a DPS loss. Like, you probably don't want to just keep constantly shapeshifting to do things, but it's kind of I like the idea of you being a druid. I like what they're trying to do. You're a druid, you're a master of shapeshifting. You want to utilize your different forms, You don't want to just stay in that form, but at least as a feral druid at, DPS, there needs to be more of an incentive to shapeshift into these different forms. Just having these extra utility things is not enough. Yes, I can go balance affinity and I can go into boomkin form, but I'm pretty sure that going into boomkin form and attacking is going to be a DPS loss than just staying in feral, unless I'm getting some sort of a big bonus, like maybe a cooldown, for instance. Like I go into balance affinity, or make the balance affinity a cooldown. So Moonkin form becomes like a DPS cooldown, for instance, where I go into Moonkin form and then like all my abilities now are like really strong and just as strong as my cat form, if not stronger, and it only lasts for like a certain amount of time. That's the kind of thing that I think would be cool, because as it stands now, it just doesn't feel great. I don't think it's a terrible spec, but if you played Feral in BFA and you go to the new Feral or the Shadowlands Feral, it's not gonna feel that great. And if you didn't really like Feral, you're probably gonna like it even less currently. But hopefully the legendaries and Covenant and Soulbind stuff makes it better. But that's all for these changes and what I think about the current state of the Feral Druid in Alpha. If you liked the video, please give a like and subscribe for future videos. And as always, thanks for watching.